Welcome back, everybody, to a new entrepreneuring interview brought to you by the Arrowhead Center at NMSU. My guest today runs an ecotourism website over at EcoTripMatch.com. Terry Lawson Dunn, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
I appreciate you. Appreciate you joining me here. You were so kind to provide me with some articles ahead of time. I've read an interview with you. You have quite the resume.
It's a little mixed up, yes.
Yeah, wildlife biologist, environmental communicator, author, artist, tour leader, curator, and obviously you're on this show, an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You've done quite a few things. So for those out there who are unfamiliar, and I'll throw myself in there as well, what exactly is ecotourism?
So ecotourism is tourism that helps to benefit conservation of wildlife, wildlands, and cultures. It provides an alternative income for communities that might choose other sources of income that are more damaging, like logging or forestry, or oil extraction, for example. And it helps to provide an incentive for those communities to choose conservation over those. And for tourists, it tends to be more engaging tourism, more actively involved in their connection to nature. Often there's an educational component to it also. Okay.
So what is EcoTripMatch?
So EcoTripMatch is a website I developed to help people more easily connect to ecotourism providers, so accommodations and tour providers that really walk the talk. I started with a list of about 1,000 that I had found online myself and screened them from there to find the ones that really seem to be doing what they say they're trying to do. And I wanted to make it easier for people looking for that type of travel to find those places. People who are interested in nature tourism have different questions than folks that are looking for just accommodations and a price. So they have questions like, what kind of immunizations do you need? Or how much stamina do you need? Do I need to take a donkey to get into some of these places? For example, there are some places like that.
I can see that.
There's also places in relatively urban areas that might be great stopover points that are just a little bit more eco-friendly. So I wanted to help the two sides find each other better. It usually involves a big, daunting online search for folks to find some of these places and find the answers to those questions. So basically, I did the work for them.
Gotcha. Well, that does certainly seem like important questions, especially relating to donkey travel.
Yeah.
Now, on top of all of this, I hear that EcoTripMatch.com is giving away an award this month.
Yes. So last year, I was trying to think of a way that I could give people an idea of what some of the folks on the essentially front lines of ecotourism are doing. And those folks tend to be the nature tour guides. So those are the ones that lead groups of people through an experience. And they tend to be the folks that are helping to educate people on the wildlife and areas that they're visiting, but also they act as sort of cultural ambassadors for their regions as well. So I wanted to honor them in some way and also bring attention to them. So what I decided to do was I requested nominations from providers around the world. And from those nominations, a panel of 5 judges narrowed it down to 5 finalists. And then I put it up for an online global vote. So it was really interesting to see what happened. Started off a little bit slow, and then it just took off. And I could literally see on Google Analytics the world start to light up as these votes were coming in. So word was spreading. People that had sort of a favorite guide they had visited or interacted with in the past, or just a favorite, they were all very inspiring. So this sort of took off. And a guide from Colombia won, and I sent him an engraved plaque to honor him as the 2017 Best Nature Tour Guide. This year, 2018, doing the same thing again, the same process. It goes up for vote this month, and it will wrap up at the end of the month. And in addition to the plaque, the winner's going to get a pair of really nice binoculars from Swarovski Optics in Austria. So obviously a guide could always use great binoculars, and often the tourists that are traveling with that person can also see what their guide is using, and that also might help to inspire some better looks at what they're seeing out there.
Well, that's great. So voting's open as we are speaking. This is being recorded in January of 2018. In case anyone's catching this significantly down the line, right. but you can. You have a website. It's just a link through your website, so you can go to ecotipmatch.com/best-nature-tour-guide-vote, and go and cast your vote right now.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody to read all 5 stories. It's going to be hard to pick. I can tell you that. They're all very inspiring. These are dedicated people and very interesting backgrounds. Middle of the Amazon, the bush in Africa, very interesting backgrounds and inspiring stories these folks have.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you really put some work into narrowing it down to these finalists. So I would expect the choice to be difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, now that's now. What about, how did you get to here? Is EcoTripMatch your first business?
In a way it is. It's sort of the most official one. So I've been basically self-employed, working on a number of things for really the last couple of decades. It's been a blend of different things. And so I have had other ideas that I followed up on, a couple books that have been published that were based on different ideas. And so it's not completely unfamiliar territory to me. The sort of worldwide internet aspect of it is relatively new to me. And I find it very inspiring, these connections that I've been able to create around the world. Bhutan, South America, Southern Africa, Europe, all around the world, people are really trying to do great things. And so it's not unusual for me to wake up in the morning and have messages related to EcoTripMatch, but also some of them now more personal from different parts of the world. So that's pretty inspiring. But how to get here? So that's been, in a way, it's roundabout, but not really. So I've always been about trying to connect people with nature and trying to inspire that connection. So really, everything I've done has that common thread. What ended up happening is I had done some bird research in Panama years ago and wanted to go back and put together a group of basically friends and other contacts to do a trip down there about a decade ago, and continue to do that almost every year. There's been another couple trips to other parts of the world now. But what I kept hearing from these people is their frustration in finding trips like that. So their choices were sort of giant tour groups that didn't quite do what they wanted to do, or they would give up on looking for the accommodations that they were trying to find because it just became overwhelming. So in order to support conservation through ecotourism, I wanted to find a way to connect the providers with the tourists, because if that's not happening, then ecotourism is not going to work and conservation is not going to be the result of that. So I was looking for a way to connect those two sides better. So that's how it evolved. And interestingly, to create this business and create this website, it really took all the things I've done before. So it's the understanding of the biology of it. It's understanding what people are looking for. So that's sort of the environmental communication aspect of it. It took the creative, artistic side of me and also the side of me that enjoys writing and reaching out to people in that way. So it kind of ended up being a accumulation of everything that's happened before.
I can really sympathize with that. I know
Yeah.
I know what it's like
a lot of people like that, actually.
Right. Yeah. I feel like a lot of self-starters tend to juggle a lot of different disciplines, and at some point you land on a project that kind of brings them all into the fold.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, we're here. We're doing this interview because of the Arrowhead Center. How has the Arrowhead Center helped your business?
Well, that was a fantastic experience. So I went through the Startup Accelerator program July 2017, and knowing it would be intense, not knowing that some of my dinners would be standing at the kitchen counter eating cereal by hand out of a box, but it was intense. And the reason it was intense is also what the benefit was of it. And that was conducting quite a few interviews of people to narrow down how I can best develop this business. So I had obviously had contact with nature travelers before, but this allowed me to do sort of a deep dive into the mind of a nature traveler and how they're planning their trips. And what I found is the way my website was designed before July was I was sort of capturing people in the middle of their process, which is fine. But what I really want to be doing is catching them at the beginning of their process. So I just completed a redesign of the website. So people have the option of very quickly reaching the point where they can seek out whether or not they want accommodations only, or they want help customizing a trip or suggestions on itineraries, and connecting them to people in the world that can do that and help them with those plans. So that was the benefit of going through that program.
That's great. Now, so take me through a day, working on EcoTripMatch. What does your day-to-day look like?
Oh, every day's a little bit different. I'm sure everybody says that. It's sort of somewhat depends on what emails come in and what little fires to put out, and still trying to retain that to-do list. So those days tend to be a mix of marketing of different sorts, whether it's writing or newsletters or Facebook ads or whatever kind of mixture I'm working on, and trying to recruit more accommodations and providers on the website, reaching out to others that are doing similar things and seeing if there's ways to collaborate. In terms of the day itself, I always try and incorporate some time to just do the bigger picture thinking, because it's really easy to get mired in the details. And I actually enjoy the bigger picture thinking. I need to often make sure that whatever I'm thinking of pursuing is not a tangent, but is in line with the core of what I'm trying to do. And I have to admit that I'm a big outdoor exerciser. So almost every day I do something outside, mountain bike or walk or hike. And it is the farthest thing from a bad use of my time, because that's very often when the ideas come to me. And so an hour outside is worth 3 inside sitting at a desk trying to ponder something. So I usually do incorporate that in also. Oh,
that is great to hear. I've just, middle of last year started trying to make sure I get outside for at least, even if it's only 30 minutes a day, because it's so easy, especially when you work on a computer. It is very easy to just spend all day in front of the screen.
Yeah.
No. Is there? I mean, every guest I have in here, I always ask them, what advice would you give to others? And I'm sure it's difficult to narrow it down. But is there anything that kind of jumps into your head as this is a piece of advice I wish I had when I started building my business?
Oh, piece of advice. I really do think. Well, there's a few probably. One is to really stay true to what you intend to do, and in order to do that, you really need to have a strong commitment and interest in it, in the purpose and the end point and what you're trying to do. Because along with every day, there's moments of terror. What am I doing? I mean, this is uncharted territory. And there's financial fears, and there's fears of making a fool of yourself, and there's fears, self-doubt, all kinds of things that emerge that you daily need to push aside for the greater purpose. So if you're doing it just so that you can work at home or because somebody else thought it was a good idea, you're probably not going to have the motivation to sustain it. So it really needs to be something that you feel very strongly about and are willing to recommit to every day.
It's definitely great advice. I I have definitely gone through those panic sessions more than once in my life.
Yeah.
Now, I've read other interviews with you, and in those interviews, there seems to be a large focus on creativity. And I mean, creativity can take so many different forms. But I was curious, do you have a goal, or like how do you harness your creativity into a force for your business?
I think it's my belief that everybody is creative. So when people say I'm not very creative, they're maybe thinking in terms of visual arts or music or something that we all, it's very obvious it's creative. But there's creativity involved in just how you live your life too. So my problem is not lack of creativity, as you're kind of alluding to. It's sort of harnessing the creativity in the right direction. So I have 5 new ideas a day, I would say. And my job is actually to eliminate or give away some of those ideas so that I can stay focused on what I'm intending to do. But I also make sure that I don't dismiss it. So sometimes an idea takes a little while to gel, and then I need to decide whether it has merit or not. So, but I think this is part of the reason that the time in nature, exercise, alternating some of my artwork and writing with, excuse me, what I'm trying to do is important, because it kind of works on part of your brain that may not be in motion when you're in front of the computer or you're, strategizing in some other way. And it powers that other piece of it. So it is important to sort of have this parallel universe of creativity that may be unrelated, because it does seem to feed the whole picture.
That's exactly what I was kind of alluding to. It's this mention of I have 5 new ideas a day, and there's definitely self-curation that has to happen when you're running your own show.
Mm-hmm.
And also it ties into what you were talking about earlier about getting outside for at least an hour a day, and that's when the ideas come. This idea of when you let your brain work in a different way, it has this way of freeing things up and letting the ideas come. Whereas if you sit there and you try and make it happen, that's when you experience the block. Yeah.
I have learned to take make sure I have my phone with me. Sometimes the ideas come when I'm driving, or, but I send messages to myself, because boy, those ideas can disappear by the time you're done with errands too.
Yep.
So you want to capture them, send them to yourself, write them down, whatever you have to do. And you may, excuse me, in the light of day, realize it's not, a good idea, but sometimes those lead to other ideas.
Yeah. So, they absolutely do. I just absolutely send messages to yourself. I do the same thing, because it's me. It's like when I'm dozing off to sleep. And it's like, oh, wait, need my phone. Write it down on my notepad. Put the phone away. Go to sleep.
Yeah.
Oh, well, as we're winding up here, I mean, we've mentioned EcoTripMatch.com a few times, but before you go, where else can everyone keep up with you?
I'm also on LinkedIn. EcoTripMatch has a Facebook page as well, and people can reach out to me. I think there's some email address attached to this as well. And if you have something going on or just want to have a conversation, I'd be very up for that. I'm really all about sort of hoping that people feel inspired. So that's all of this works together to, whether it's a personal email or email associated with ecotourism, it all works.
Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, there are multiple links down below where you can go and click to find out more about EcoTripMatch or reach out to Terry. Again, Terry, thank you so much for your time today. It was great getting to hear your story. And don't forget, everyone, go and vote for the best nature tour guide over at EcoTripMatch.com right now.
Thanks.
Thanks as always for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more interviews with entrepreneurs. And visit arrowheadcenter.nmsu.edu to learn how New Mexico State University can help you launch your business.